I have a few questions and comments on the redevelopment aspect that tie into our initial pledge that we would have one city, not two. My first concern is that we wind up in a situation of trapped funding where we wind up polishing the base area as opposed to working with the rest of the city, and therefore it drives a completely different concept of two separate cities. Right now, our structure, we have a redevelopment agency and we have 4 separate subsections. The structure, as I understand it, as we have here, is that we will now have 2 redevelopment projects, one with 4 subsections and one with just the base. Now, as we go down and the base matures, over the next 20, 30 years, it's going to be generating large amounts of revenue that will be trapped under the plan, with the exception of the housing, which I'll deal separate, at the base and its related areas. Because we have in our concept that it expires on a yearly basis, 20 years, 45 years, what will happen is, and governments have proven this time and time again, if they have a trapped source of funding, they will spend and find ways to spend it more and more. And we will move from economic redevelopment into economic development. And in fact, we will go through 20 years down the road what I would call a polishing of the area, because the $300 or $500 million that are being generated will find a home. I would like you to include in the structure that if the initial infrastructure is paid, that the redevelopment is ended, that the whole agency comes to a termination, and that the debts be paid, that we do not continue to polish the area. Because governments, when they have a funding source and a time period, will A, we know they will go up to the end of the limit, and B, they will try to extend it. Therefore, I'm saying that since we want to have redevelopment and remove blight, 20 years from now, hopefully all the blight is gone. We have 28,000 people in there, all right? And we have which should be a $7 to $8 billion project, generating tremendous amounts of income that should have paid the initial amount off. Close it off. Put it in now, because it is our promise to the existing people here on this side that we will not allow that side to grow further than this, by using the redevelopment as the engine that polishes that. Which leads me into the second issue. To a certain extent, I applaud the provision in the agreement that allows us to use some of the redevelopment funds for housing outside of the project area, something that was specifically addressed. All right, this allows us to address some of the blighted areas around. I should hope that we don't dump more of it in the Monument Corridor, the affordable housing. However, there's a political problem that is opened up when we allow this, and I think we need to address it because we owe it to ourselves and our future. If we allow the affordable housing that is required in the weapon station area to be satisfied by this side, once again, we open up the door of polishing. It allows for the bleeding off of all the affordable housing from this area under that clause to be placed elsewhere in the city, again, leading to 2 different, substantially different communities. One where the older communities where the affordable housing can be then placed, and the newer one financed by this redevelopment funding. Therefore, while I can understand that there has to be some moderation, I would ask that in addition to allowing the flexibility of having some redevelopment being used in the other parts of the city, that a minimum amount be required to be placed in the weapon station so that we don't get a situation where the affordable housing is all dumped on this side, even though it's paid for by that side. So those are the 2 basic things. Housing as a requirement so that we don't create an imbalance by allowing the opening. All all right? And second, that we trap the funding, that require it to be paid, and that the whole program, the whole redevelopment program, be ended when the initial redevelopment infrastructure be done, so that people, 20 years from now, you're going to have a political situation where you have 28,000 people who are going to be screaming, hey, let's use this money to build, gold-plated Todos Santos North. All right? And you're going to have developers who have owned huge commercial buildings that are going to have hundreds of millions of dollars, billions plus invested, who are going to want to keep the development there. All right? And everyone will find new ways to do it. And we will be doing economic development in an area which, when we have already accomplished our goal. And therefore, again, I ask that we already have a statutory age limit, that we put in a requirement that when the infrastructure builds and the initial phase has been paid for, the development program ends. Thank you.